I'm Sheila Tolbert, and I'm doing my presentation on Cherokee freedmen. If you recall on page 174 of our history, the term freedmen refers to emancipated slaves and their descendants who were owned by citizens of the 5 tribes. Their stories are unique in that although not many people know about the first time I heard about freedmen? In this class. In a small 2-sentence statement in the Native American section of Chapter 4 of our history. I'm 22 years old and I've never heard of it. So when Dr. Litgow told us to do our final research presentation on something other than the Revolutionary War or Abraham Lincoln or Watergate, I thought an obscure topic like Cherokee freedmen would be a surefire A. And there's Cherokee in my family, so why not? It seemed simple until I started to do my family's research. Until I realized that the reason we were told we had Indian in our family is because we were owned by Native Americans. Do you know what that does to someone, Dr. Litgow? What it does to someone to learn that they were oppressed by the oppressed? What it does to someone's psyche? Because I don't. I don't know if I should feel happy that my ancestors were owned by Cherokees or sad. I don't know if I should feel happy that they received a 40-acre allotment that the U.S. government basically stole from Cherokees. I don't know. But I do know me and my friends are out here wearing t-shirts that say, I am not my ancestors. And we don't even know who our ancestors are because no history book actually teaches us our history. So when you told me to provide a hypothesis and prove it, I did. I wrote an educated guess because no one really bothered to take down their stories. And so your request seems insulting, actually. I'm not going to sit here and give some long presentation on narratives you refuse to teach all year. I don't want to have to prove to the class that this story exists, that my story exists. The makers of history books have spent centuries denying and covering up our stories, so I'm not going to be the one to convince you of anything, to prove to you what is. It's your job to reveal what's been covered up. I'm the descendant of Venus Nave, an African woman who was stolen from her land, her body abused the way slave women's bodies were abused. She was purchased by a member of Cherokee Nation, the same nation that the U.S. oppressed and tricked and massacred, all the while owned people and fathered property. And you want me to what? Put that in a colorful PowerPoint? You want me to tell it like we're kids sitting around the rug at story time? You want me to cry? You want to pat me on the back and say, you did a good job, you get an A? Also, you can teach another history class next year that teaches the same story without this narrative. I'd rather take the F. No, I'm not going to give you another dinner table story so you can self-congratulate on your teaching skills, just so you can forget. Or maybe mention it in some small by-the-way sentence next year during February. This isn't just stories. This is history. U.S. history. I will plant myself in the narrative of my ancestors, and you will bend to the truth of our existence the way we have bent to the fabrication and exaggeration of yours. Or you will break under the weight of your arrogant dismissal. Either way, the burden of proof is no longer on me.
Welcome to DSM's Black Art Matter series. We're here today with Lauren Harrison, who is a Dallas native, graduate of South Grand Prarie High School, and current student at the University of Texas at Arlington, where she is pursuing a BFA in theater. Welcome, Lauren.
Hi, Devon.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm happy to be here. Super excited.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. So we're going to jump right into the first question. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
So the first question we have that we start every interview with is, because this series is called Black Art Matters, we just want to know, what does Black identity mean to you and for you?
I think it kind of has this like mission statement to me, I guess you could say. My view on Black identity right now is kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Broadening what it means to be a Black artist, and broadening the different types of stories that come from it, because it's not all just one thing. It's not a stereotype, I guess you could say. It's I just think that there's so much more that needs to be out there, and I think that there's so many more people that deserve to have their stories told, and that's what I think Black identity means to me.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering that with such truth and honesty. When you say there's so much more that needs to be out there, I just want to dive into that a little bit. Are you referencing the work that's being produced, the actors and directors who are being hired? Can you
Yeah.
expand on that a little bit for us?
It really is just all of that, especially like for example, last night I was talking to Janelle Gray, and I was telling her how sometimes whenever I'm going to look for a monologue, which granted I'm still pretty young, it's still all new to me, but I'm always reminded how difficult it is to be a Black girl, because it really feels like it's very hard to find that those stories that are not either slave stories or like sassy, angry Black woman stories. And like I'm neither, kind of in between. So I like to find more things, see more things that I feel are more relatable, and like not in terms of being Black, but just like in terms of like stuff I relate to and the things I like and the things that I wear, and things like that. And then also like with the actors that you see, different skin tones. It's been like a big thing about like wanting to see more dark skinned people on the screen, and I agree. I like different types of people from all these different types of backgrounds. That's, I guess, what I'm talking about.
No, that's great. So when it comes to your perception and thoughts around Black identity, have those thoughts shaped the type of art that you've wanted to create or pursue?
Absolutely. My biggest goal right now is, I will say, I think Black art and Black stories are very important and definitely need to be told. But I also feel like there's this unity that I want to see more of, like in like anything, like stories that don't have to be about race, being more inclusive to all different types of races. And so, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No worries. So you're talking about this idea of more unity in all stories.
So, I'm so sorry I had it.
You're fine.
It's wanting to see, oh, okay, so it's like wanting to see these stories of people of all different types of races that don't have to be limited to just the race that that person is in. And so like while I think, like I said, like these stories that are specifically of color and like need to be told, but I also don't want that to be limited,
Right.
Like it's one thing for like a Black artist to thrive, and that's great, but I also don't want it to be like, oh, look, they can do their own thing in their own corner for the Black theater, so the Black people can go there. It should be like everything for everyone.
Yeah.
That type of thing.
Yeah.
That's what I was wanting to say.
No,
Sorry,
yeah,
it took
no,
so long.
That was great. I want to ask you a question about something that we were talking about earlier off camera, and that's this idea of, when you're in high school, you are sometimes able to do shows that aren't necessarily appropriate culturally, or in terms of race of the students that are in those shows. And what is usually the out for that is that it's quote unquote a learning experience for students. What are your thoughts and views on that?
I 100% agree that like it's definitely a learning experience, and all of these stories are something valuable that kids should know, especially kids that are in high school. But when it comes to actually performing them, I don't feel that that's necessary. Yes, it's like it's an entertainment thing, and like we love to see those stories that have made it big, like In the Heights and The Color Purple. But like you don't necessarily have to perform those to get that message across. Not to mention, it's not when you do a school like we were talking about earlier, like the production we saw, a clip we saw online of In the Heights done by a cast that was like entirely white. You don't have to perform those to tell that story, especially because it's not really their story to tell. there's so many other plays and musicals that they could have done that with stories that are still very, very important. And like I said, it could, like you said earlier, it could easily be like a classroom experience. And like those kids, if that art is really meaningful to them, then they'll go and find ways to be more inclusive and to tell other people about it without having to do the show. Not to mention, I feel like overall, when you do things like that, no matter what your intention is, it's going to defeat the purpose. It's going to water it down. It's like, look at this story of these other people being performed by us, because it's going to take away the aspects of that story. So then you see these kids doing the story and it's like, oh, the lights are pretty and everything's so much fun, the singing, but then you forget the purpose of that story because it's not their story.
Speak the truth, Lauren. Yes. So I wonder then, everything you just said, how does that relate to your own high school experience and even now your college experience?
High school, I was kind of wanting to just be in anything. So we didn't really have any issues with our directors did a really good job of making sure everyone got a chance. And I think we did a pretty good job of, we had a very diverse school. Everyone got to perform. We didn't do any shows like that that were not racially appropriate. So it didn't really occur to me, I guess, at that time. And then when I got to my senior year, the summer after my senior year, and I did Much Ado About Nothing with junior players. That was a real eye opener for me, because I played Beatrice, and I was playing against the lead who was playing Benedict was white, and then in a full cast of kids that were of different colors. And I was like, I got to be the lead in a show that has nothing to do with my race, and I was like, this is awesome, and I wanted to see more of that, let alone do more of that. And then in college, there's been some issues in the past, and there's still some issues that people are continuing to talk about. But I can definitely see, and like, especially my mentor and my professors, they're definitely doing what they want, not what they want, but they're trying their best to fix that and to avoid having incidents like that in the past again, especially because at UTA it's growing. It's not only in numbers, but also in diversity. And so they're working on different programs and different ways to adhere to every person getting that shot and being more inclusive of all the different races, genders, sexual orientations, so on and so forth.
Yeah. So what I think is really interesting about you, Lauren, is that even though you are a student, in addition to being a student, you also have several credits already under your belt at different theaters here in the Dallas area. Can you speak a little bit about what the audition process has been like, or what the show selection process has been like from a Black artist perspective, of which shows you want to go out and audition for, what work you're looking for?
I'm still at that phase where I'm like, I'm auditioning for everything. If I see it, I'm going to be out there. But I would say in the DFW area, it's not as diverse as I would like for it to be, but there's definitely something there. And I'll be honest, there's been like quite a few auditions where I've auditioned and I'm like, I'm not going to get it, just because like it may be a play about like World War II or something like that. And I'm like, they're probably not going to cast me just because. And I guess as I'm saying that, I'm realizing that I've been content with that. And maybe because I'm young, I'm like, maybe it just hasn't been my time yet, or like I haven't seen enough of that yet. And maybe it's just like something that's just in the future. But for the most part, I guess I'm realizing now as I'm saying it that that contentness is maybe not something that's ideal, but I guess only time will tell with that. And then the auditioning processes, so far I've had, nothing's been like offensive. Nothing's been where I was like, whoa, I don't know about that, or like, but I hear these stories that other actors have gone through, and I dread having to experience those things if that time ever comes. But that also kind of, I guess, inspires me to want to do whatever I can to avoid those things in the future. Maybe if it is on the production side, or things like that, directing side in the future. Yeah.
So even though you are relatively young, in this conversation we've had today, and then even on some social media posts I've seen you put out there, you still have some incredible views about where our sector needs to go in order to be more equitable. What inspires you to put your voice out there? Because it's a very brave thing to do, to step up as Black individuals and say we will be heard. What is your inspiration?
It's just seeing Black artists thrive. It really is. Regardless if it's like, the people that are like Oscar winners and movies and television and like local artists, even like you, Devon. Like I love seeing like these people thriving in the community, in a community that's not really meant for us, and in a community that really kind of takes our stories for granted. But every little triumph, I'm like, there's some hope, there's optimism. And that's the way I feel also with like things like the protests. Like, we're not quite there yet. It's probably going to be a while before we're there. But like, seeing people refuse to give up, and like every little victory is something to me. Like it's something meaningful, I guess.
Yeah, I love the optimism and hope that you have, and what you bring to the work when you do your craft. I think is just beautiful. I want to kind of switch gears now here in terms of support system for Black artists in this sector. So, two-pronged question for you. Personally, growing up and even now, do you think you have had and do have a great support system as a Black artist and individual to do your craft? And then the second part of that question is, do you think our sector provides enough support for Black artists to thrive?
I personally feel like I do have a great support system. I've got my mentor at UTA who's Black, and a great deal of my friends that are fellow artists are of color. And, we can all relate to different stories and different experiences that I can always go to them and tell. And even my best friend who is white, she's an amazing support system. She's always there for me, and she's always like, she'll even like be like, I don't want to offend you, but like things like that. But at the same time, I also feel like I'm one of the lucky ones, and that makes me worry about kids that maybe didn't have the opportunities that I was blessed enough to have. And so that still has me wanting to consider, on your second part of the question about the system, because honestly, I can't really speak to it. I feel maybe I haven't gone far enough to experience it, but it does make me want to, because while I may not have had to go through and see it yet, I don't know what if those opportunities will be similar for kids that maybe didn't have the same experience in growing up that I did.
Yeah.
So
You just in yourself and the work that you put out and the words that you put out to the public, you are an incredible young advocate for this movement that's happening right now.
Thank you.
What advice do you have for others that are your age who want to be just as vocal in this advocacy work to reach racial equity in the performing arts sector?
I say completely 100,000% go for it. Just put things out there, continue to do things that people will see and people will hear. And just don't be afraid, continue to push, continue to shake the boat. That's all we really can do right now, is to be seen.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. One final question here as we wrap up, because I want to end on this idea that you've expressed multiple times during this interview of, hope and aspirations for the future. What are your hopes and aspirations for the sector as a whole moving forward as we reach or try to reach towards racial equity in the performing arts sector?
I guess you could say what I would like to see is definitely more stories being written on like way different, more perspectives, like I said earlier. And then I guess I want to see more art that's put out, Because honestly, sometimes it feels like, look at us putting out art because we're inclusive, but it's not genuine, I guess. And I would like to see more of that. And I would like to see more opportunities for those kids to be able to share their voice and to be able to see if this is really where their heart lies. Yeah.
Lauren, thank you so much for your time. I have no doubt that you are the next generational voice and leader in our sector and in this movement. And with you and others like you, I have hope now for the future. And it's just a joy for me to be able to talk to you and to share your voice and your experience with the DSM audiences. So thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your voice with us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This was so much fun.
Of course.